All right, guys, we're doing a ride along with the 69. I just drove over to this parking lot just to shoot kind of an intro and get it all warmed up. We're gonna hop in, just take her kind of down the road, take her for a spin, talk a little bit about, kind of the driving experience with this car. This thing is pretty visceral to drive. So I'm gonna talk about kind of just the way it drives and the things, you'll be able to watch it on video too, going down the road, and the sounds and stuff, just to kind of get you guys a feel for being behind the driver's seat of this thing. And I can't wait, because that's the best part. This car looks great. It's a beautiful car, but with all that power and all the upgrades we did, the driving experience is really different than pretty much any other Chevelle I've ever been in. So we'll talk a little bit about that and what makes it so special. All right, here we go. Fans are still ripping. Those are on a temperature switch, so they will not turn off until the car gets up to temp. Sometimes starting this thing, you gotta prime it a little bit. It is warm now, so maybe it'll just fire up. Let's see. Yeah, no problem. Sometimes when it's cold, I'll prime the pump with the key twice. Pretty standard fuel injection stuff. This thing is an 11:1 compression ratio, 427. So it's pretty big cubic inch LS engine, and it's got the blower and it's got some compression. So sometimes you do need to prime it, but it does start right up. It's got the FiTech fuel management system. It's got a FiTech force fuel tank, which is basically a surge tank. So what happens is the pump that's inside the fuel tank that's behind the car in the factory location, it basically just primes a little force fuel unit, and it's a surge tank, so it has two pumps in it, and it always has fuel, so that your tank that's in the pump isn't struggling to keep up with the demands if you're really driving this hard. That thing never runs out of fuel, and that keeps your engine safe. A car at this power level, if you run out of fuel, it leans out or something, could be bad news for the engine, but we don't have to worry about that with the FiTech unit. And of course, the handheld controller is here. You can monitor a lot with this controller. They have a gauge set up that you can mount, and you can just kind of look at everything all at once. I really like looking at the AFR, the air fuel ratio, but I don't look at it as much anymore. Now that we have a few miles on this thing, we know it's dialed. We're not really monitoring it as closely. And of course, we have all the gauges in the dash for your real vital stuff: oil pressure, water temperature, fuel level, and then we have a boost gauge there, which is kind of nice. The first time I was driving this car, it was hard to focus on the boost gauge because it's a pretty visceral experience driving this car. But now I've been able to look at it and kind of see, when you really get into it, it's making boost. This is really nice to have this handheld. It's a little redundant now that we have this, but there's more things you can monitor with this. So if you're really into fine-tuning it and seeing what's going on with your car, this is really cool. So I probably won't be looking at it too much today. We're just gonna go for a nice relaxed drive, if there is such a thing in this car. It's not hard to drive, but you kind of got to get used to it. It's not like a Camry or something like that, it's a high horsepower car, and it's still a classic car. So right off the bat, taking off on this thing, it has a dual disc clutch, so it's a little bit grabby. You can almost feel both discs engaging, so you feel it almost grab twice, basically, because it's both discs. So you got to get used to that a little bit, but that's what's required at this power level. You're pretty much not going to get away with a nice, easy single disc clutch at this power level. It'll just slip. You won't put the power down with this car. So get some strange looks because we have a 360 cam mount on the back, so people are trying to figure out what that is. So this car does have a 350 rear gear. So with the 6-speed, we had options to do I guess you would call it a steeper rear gear, something I don't know, we were thinking a 370, or maybe even something in the 4 range, 410. But in reality, the engine makes so much torque that it's just not necessary. So we're at a little bit lower RPM through every gear, even in the higher gears with this 350. And I never have felt like I wanted it to launch any harder. This thing struggles for traction no matter what. It makes so much torque at low RPM with the supercharger that I think the 350 almost makes it a little bit more drivable, to be honest. It's a little bit more like easier to take off from a stop sign and stuff like that. I really like the feel of everything on this car. That's one thing that we really tried to focus on when we were speccing out the interior on this car, was everything that you interact with should be high-end. So pretty much everything that you're gonna touch and use on a daily basis in this car has been upgraded. Everything from like just kind of matching all the textures with the shift knob and even the blinker and the column adjuster, they're all brushed aluminum, and that kind of complements the stainless cage. And then we have like polished aluminum in other places, like the steering wheel. And of course this steering wheel is really high-end. It's a Spark Industries steering wheel. So with the leather wrapped, just the shape of the wheel, everything is pretty high-end, and it kind of contributes to feeling a little more special when you drive this car. I really do like a lot of the original GM stuff because it's a throwback to that era, but this car doesn't lose that look, but it just feels a little bit more refined, which is kind of what we were going for. Nothing too wild. We didn't want to like change a layout or anything. Like if you notice, the gauges are not the stock gauges, but they're kind of in the stock place. You know, we didn't change the shape of the dash. We just did a nice leather wrapped stock shaped dashboard just to upgrade it. And then the vintage air controls, these are all like billet sliders and everything, so much nicer than the original stuff. So that was kind of the theme when we were looking to spec out the interior. We did that a little bit to the exterior too, so we just wanted to continue that in the interior. And just the stuff that you interact with is a lot nicer. All the pedals are upgraded. They're all also brushed aluminum low carb pedals with like a different type of textured rubber pad. The seats, obviously these Sparco seats are just incredible. That's one thing, you feel like you're really safe in this car because you're held in by the seat. You got the harnesses that are attached to the RideTech cage. So that's something with this car at this power level, you want to kind of have that feeling of security, that's extra added safety. There's enough wildness going on with this car that you still feel the excitement of that power, but like a little bit more secure with some of the upgrades we've done. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get on the freeway. Pretty planted, even on on-ramps, like on these little turns and stuff. All that QA1 stuff feels really good. And when you turn too, you really notice the chassis stiffening on this car. It does have a factory chassis, but we added a lot of stiffeners from RideTech to it. Upgraded sway bars and all that stuff, and that helps. These cars were designed to be a little more comfort oriented in the 60s, and we wanted everything to feel more planted and safer. So we're just cruising. This is 5th gear here. We're going a little over 60, probably 65, and we're at 2,500 RPM. And that's 5th gear, so we still have another gear. That goes back to that 350 ratio. It's almost too much overdrive, but at the same time, this engine makes so much low-end torque that even if you're in that cruising low RPM, it's still responsive. So when you get on the throttle, you don't feel like you're lugging the car, which happens sometimes when you have like a high revving engine and you have, you know, like too much of like a freeway gear. You'll get that a little bit in that case. I hope everyone can hear me okay. We are on the freeway. This car is not quiet. It's not obnoxiously loud, but at this power level, you're going to hear the car. You're going to hear the supercharger. Literally the cog belts are like maybe 2 feet away from you here. So you get to experience that. I like it. You know, you can drive a comfortable car on your commute to work and back, and it can be dead silent, and that's delivers that all the time. So. Visibility is actually pretty good in this car. To be honest, it's better than some new cars. A lot of new cars have like a real high sail panel or 3/4 panel, and you can't see anything. This car, okay, so this guy's not going to use a signal. This car, you can really see everything, so it's good. We are in Southern California, so this isn't even peak traffic, and you can see there's just a ton of cars on the road. It's just how life is around here. Try to take this car like out in the middle of the day so that you guys don't have to just watch me sitting and stop and go. So you can see I didn't even drop a gear. That's 6 gears still, and it's plenty. This car absolutely does this thing on the freeway. I've never like really on a public road seeing what this car can do, but we were at the 8th mile at the airstrip basically running this car, and we saw speeds. That was a private road obviously, but we saw speeds over 100 miles an hour there in the 8th mile. So this car has no problem at speed. Everything feels good. Tires are really well balanced. We got the 2-piece American racing wheels. Not hard to balance those wheels. Sometimes aftermarket wheels are like a little iffy and you feel it at speed when you're trying to balance them. Not the case with this. And the Falcon Genesis is a great tire. So I'm just trying to get off the freeway here. Just kind of take you back on a public road. Hopefully there's not so many cars. Gear's pretty long with that 352, so I mean you can get up to like, I don't know, 25-30 miles an hour if you stay in it in first gear, which is pretty good. I kind of like that too for the drivability. Some of the close ratio transmissions with a steep rear gear, you know, just going through the intersection you already have to be in 3rd gear. This one's got so much power throughout the power band that you can stay in that gear a little longer and makes the car a little more livable every day on a day-to-day basis, but doesn't really take anything away from it when you go like to do real performance driving. This thing, it's a handful to launch with the stick shift, managing traction yourself. This thing, there's nothing there to help you manage this traction. So you get cars at this power level, like something modern is gonna have a lot of features that are basically just gonna pull power to try and manage traction. This car doesn't have that, so it's up to you to manage the traction, modulate the throttle. If you just drive it normally around town, not a big deal. If you're trying to really launch it and get like the best launch out of it, it's tricky. You gotta kind of practice to do that. But that's the fun part about a car like this, is getting to know it, getting to feel it and drive it. That's kind of the best part. I like the way the brakes feel on this car too. We went with manual brakes with big four-wheel disc brakes, big 15-inch rotors in the front with 6-piston calipers. So even though they're manual brakes, we sized the master cylinder accordingly, and it has a really good linear feel. Something I noticed about a lot of these power brake cars is you lose some feel on that because you have so much power assist. So the manual brakes is kind of something that carries over from race cars. those usually have manual brakes because of the linear feel. It always feels the same, it's consistent. No matter how much vacuum you have or whatever's going on with the power assist, whether it's RPM related, vacuum related, the manual brakes are linear. I do like power brakes, but this car has a decent cam and a blower and all that. So vacuum power brakes were kind of off the table almost. So we just spec'd out the braking system appropriately, and I think it worked out. It worked out good. You can see, like, temp-wise, this is a really hot day, and this thing just kind of sits, like, in and out of the freeway, in and out of traffic, stop and go. It kind of just sits somewhere between 190 and 200. It's got a really ripping dual electric fan, a big aluminum radiator, just kind of the bare minimum as far as what you need for a cooling system, but a little bit above and beyond that even, with the temperature switch, some really good relays for the fans. That's an important thing, is getting like the best relays for your electric fans, because they do get a lot of duty cycles, so not uncommon for that stuff to get hot and start melting wiring. We addressed all that in this car. But just have a little fun in this car, man. It's like begging for it all the time. The power is just always there in the RPM range. It's kind of up to you how far you want to stay in it, but it's even more fun when you're rolling. Like, launching this car is fun, but it's tricky. So when you're like rolling and you're at the right RPM range, this car is an absolute animal. Suggested that I should take this car on. I don't think he knew that there was heavy construction on this road and that it wasn't going to be that exciting to drive on. So, good idea, Alex, but just didn't work out today. But said the boost right now, that was like just a light touch, and this thing was making 15 pounds of boost. That's quite a bit with this compression. At 91, we're running on pump gas, so not a lot of timing in this car to be able to handle basically those boost levels. But it just takes it. Really doesn't have any issues with it. Probably the last of the aggressive mild pulls we're gonna do because there's a sheriff right next to us. So. Be on our best behavior. Nothing to see here, sir. So quick that you just get on it for like a split second and you're right on the car in front of you, because most people are law-abiding citizens, so they're not expecting a crazy Chevelle to run up on them like that. So another sheriff. I'm gonna respect their authority. I also have not even opened the cutouts on this car. I really like the way this car sounds with the cutouts open, but I think the audio would get a little tough in here because it just gets even louder than it is now. But if you guys seen any of the other videos of it, you've seen this car with the exhaust cutouts open. It's not exactly like open headers at that point, but it's very short. They dump it basically at the middle of the car, so not that far back from the header collector, which is kind of nice. I mean, it's a whole nother experience when this thing rips past you with the collectors open. That happened to us. I was in the green 69 Charger, and this thing just blew past me with someone else driving, and it basically blew my eardrums out. But it was a good hurt. I liked it. a smile. It's always fun. This thing has a little wiggle to it, but not like what you would think for this much power. It's just struggling to put it down. So you just got to keep upshifting. It's still in the power band, but man, this thing, it'll wake you up in the morning, that's for sure. I mean, this is midday, and I feel like I just drank a cup of coffee right now. Too much fun here. We better put this thing back away. Man, I love driving this car. You don't need an energy drink. You're not worried about it when you're driving this car. I haven't even thought about like turning on the radio. I haven't really messed with a lot of the like cool little features on this car because driving it is just what it's all about with this thing. So I hope that comes through in the video. It's just so much fun to drive it. It's really like, you're really connected with this machine. You feel what it's doing a lot, but in a good way. It's not in a unrefined way, I should say. Everything's pretty dialed in. We spent a lot of time doing suspension tuning and other things to get it to feel like that. All the upgrades, they add up. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm gonna put her back in the shade here somewhere. Right here in the shop. Let's see if I can get in our Snap-on guys here, because it takes some good tools to build some good cars. Okay, that's it, I'm back. We got her tucked back in the shop. That was an amazing drive. I cannot believe this is part of my job, but it's amazing. Thanks for coming along with me, you guys. As always, you can get entered to win this car, or maybe the next one. You can kind of spy that's behind there. Whenever you're watching this video, it doesn't matter. We do a car pretty much every 3 months. This is the best one yet, so make sure you get entered to win.